Friedrich Engels, born on November 28, 1820 in Barmen, Rhine Province, Germany now, Wuppertal, Germany. He is a German thinker, philosopher, revolutionary, educator, and military theorist. After Marx's death in 1883, Engels single-handedly took on the responsibility of guiding the international workers' movement and organize and publish or reprint Marx's works, defend and develop Marxist theory. The important task of cultivating young socialist activists and theorists from various countries. In July 1885, Engels undertook the huge task of sorting out and publishing Marx's unfinished manuscripts of the second and third volumes of Das Kapital in his later years. The English version of the first volume of Das Kapital was published in January 1887. On August 5, 1895, Engels died of advanced esophageal cancer in his apartment by the Thames. On August 10th, a memorial service was held for Engels in the Waterloo Station Hall on Westminster Bridge. On August 27th, in accordance with his will, on the seaside in Eastbourne, England, Engels' favorite place during his lifetime, a small boat rowed into the depths of the sea. Sitting on the boat were Alina, Aveling, Engels' comrade Lesner, and disciple Edward Bernstein. They recited Dante's poems, picked up the black urn, and gently sank it into the sea. His ashes were scattered in the sea at Eastbourne Bay. He is known as the great teacher and leader of the proletariat and working people around the world, and is also one of the founders of Marxism. Engels was a close friend of Karl Marx and was known as the second fiddler. He provided financial support for Karl Marx's academic research. After Marx's death, he compiled and published the manuscripts and writings left by Marx and became the leader of the international workers' movement as expected. Although there is no cemetery for people to pay their respects, people around the world have built exhibition halls and monuments to commemorate Engels in various places. On November 7, 1918, when the Soviet Union celebrated the first anniversary of the October Revolution, it established a monument to Marx and Engels in Moscow's Revolution Square. Berlin, Germany also built the Marx-Engels Square, where statues of the two men were erected. In Brussels, Belgium, the Swan House, where Marx and Engels lived together, has been established as a memorial place. In the long history of history, Friedrich Engels, with his profound thoughts, stood side by side with Karl Marx, illuminating the channel of socialist theory. Their wisdom and contributions, like bright stars, will forever illuminate the path of mankind's pursuit of freedom and liberation. Let us feel it together. No religious doctrine is sufficient to support a crumbling society. In order to carry on the struggle, we must unite all our forces and concentrate them on the same point of attack. Adversity brings genius to the fore. Good times bury it. The destiny of modern times depends on the noble and unrestrained passion of young people. The noblest, most intense, and most personal of pains is the pain of love. When a person plans only for himself in life, his desire for happiness can be satisfied only in very rare circumstances, and it is by no means beneficial to himself or others. In my opinion, realism means, in addition to the authenticity of details, the true representation of typical characters in typical environments. In Marx's view, science is a revolutionary force that plays a driving role in history. Anyone who seeks the final, ultimate truth here, the true, fundamentally unchanging truth, will gain nothing. If a nation wants to stand at the highest peak of science, it must never be without theoretical thinking. Capitalism is inevitable for the new society. Contempt for dialectics cannot go unpunished. Dialectics is a science about the laws of the external world and the movement of human thought. Economics is the foundation, and politics is the concentration of economics. Utilizing time is an extremely advanced rule. Ambition is the root of all hypocrisy and lies. Whoever is afraid of the dense forest that surrounds the palace of thought, who does not use the sword to clear the way and kiss the sleeping princess to wake her, is not worthy of the princess and her kingdom. People must first eat, drink, live, and clothe themselves, and then they can engage in politics, science, art, religion, and so on. Once society has a technological need, this need will push science forward better than 10 universities. Of course, judging a person is not based on his statements, but on his actions, not on what he claims to be, but on what he does and what kind of person he actually is. Freedom does not lie in imagining independence from the laws of nature, but in understanding these laws and being able to make the laws of nature serve a certain purpose in a planned way. Making a difference is the highest realm in life. In fact, every class and even every industry has its own morality. Tradition is a huge resistance and the inertia of history. However, it is negative and therefore must be destroyed. How young is the whole history of mankind, and how ridiculous it is to insist that our current views have some kind of absolute significance. A fortress is most easily breached from the inside. The further humans move away from animals in the narrow sense, the more consciously they create their own history. Without forcing certain people to accept the will of others, that is, without authority, there can be no concerted action. There is no great historical disaster that is not compensated by historical progress. A decisive battle should only be fought when the probability of victory is very high. The actual content of the proletariat's demand for equality is the demand to eliminate classes. Any demand for equality beyond this scope is bound to become absurd. Only marriage based on love is ethical. The more tense life is, the more it shows people's vitality. Everyone pursues happiness, and personal happiness is inseparable from everyone's happiness. The bond that binds a family is not family love, but private interests hidden behind the relationship of shared property. Without the talent to master the technology, technology is dead. Labor is so important that in a sense it can be said that labor creates man himself. Matter is not the product of spirit, but spirit is only the highest product of matter. Indecision is based on ignorance. Sex is by its very nature exclusive. Ambition is the root of all hypocrisy and lies. Bravery and the belief in victory often bring battles to a victorious end. It's best if you can handle things independently, which will give you confidence. The genius of great men goes hand in hand with the intellectual deficiencies of the educated masses. No nation can become a free nation while it still oppresses other nations. The abstract possibility that the human race might grow so large that a limit must be set to its growth certainly exists. If, as you assert, technology depends to a large extent on the state of science, then the state of science depends to an even greater extent on the state and needs of technology. A bonfire can drive away the cold, and unity can drive away difficulties. The tragic conflict between the inevitable requirements of history and the actual impossibility of realizing this requirement. Mathematics is the study of quantitative relationships and spatial forms in real life. It is not consciousness that determines life, but life that determines consciousness. Studying without a plan is simply ridiculous. A gun doesn't move by itself. It takes a brave heart and a strong hand to use it. The only real evil in the world is injustice and betrayal of truth, betrayal of reality and betrayal of world order. The only unbearable pain in the world is the realization that one is being treated unreasonably and unfairly. Irresponsibility comes from megalomania. A person's character is not only reflected in what he does, but also in how he does it. The disease of the social organism is chronic in rural areas, but becomes acute in big cities, thus allowing people to discover the true nature of the disease and its treatment methods. People create the environment, and the environment also creates people. Without forcing some people to understand the will of others, that is, without authority, there can be no concerted action. Any nation that is deprived of industry and reduced to a mere collection of farmers cannot be on a par with other nations in terms of courtesy. Euphoria was the first to demonstrate the idea that in any society the degree of women's emancipation is the natural measure of general emancipation. Capitalists fight for their own profits, and workers fight for their own health and for a few hours of rest every day so that they can engage in other activities like humans besides working, sleeping, and eating. Matter without motion is equally unthinkable as motion without matter. The millions of troops required to unite in order to achieve a great goal should always keep in mind the main things and not lose their way due to meaningless nitpicking. Marriage itself remains, as before, a legally recognized form of prostitution, the official cover for prostitution, supplemented by innumerable adulteries. When a person plans exclusively for himself, his desire to pursue happiness can only be satisfied in very rare circumstances, and it is never beneficial to himself or others. Universal suffrage would force the ruling class to show kindness to workers. In this situation, the 5 representatives of the proletariat are a force. The family is the simplest and original form of social union for the purpose of production. If there is a relatively large inequality in distribution among members, then this is a sign that the commune is beginning to disintegrate. Not everyone can use slaves for service. In order to use slaves, 2 things must be mastered. First, the tools and objects required for slave labor, and second, the materials needed to maintain the slave's difficult life. In the oldest spontaneous communes, at most equal rights could be discussed among the members of the communes, which naturally did not include women slaves and outsiders. The first great division of labor, the separation of town from country, enslaved the inhabitants of the town to their respective special trades, and destroyed the basis for the intellectual development of the inhabitants of the country, and for the physical development of the inhabitants of the town. We see, on the one hand, necessary authority however it is created, and on the other hand, necessary obedience, both of which are necessary to us, whatever the social organization, given the material conditions under which the production and circulation of products depend. Only in the collective can individuals obtain the means to fully develop their talents. That is, only in the collective can individual freedom be possible. The organization itself is completely democratic. Its committees are elected and can be recalled at any time. And this alone blocks the way for any conspiratorial maniac who demands a dictatorship. Whether children are undoubtedly descended from the father can, as before, depend most on moral conviction. Let us not get too carried away by our human victory over the natural world. For every such victory, nature takes its revenge on us. Polygamy was clearly a product of slavery and was limited to a few individuals occupying a special status,